I'll let you guys know when you're broadcasting.
And if you just send me that YouTube link, I'd like to just stick it on mine.
Okay.
For sure, Nathan.
All right, everyone. Good evening. We are online. Yeah, we are already broadcasting to YouTube. Welcome, everybody. Good evening. Also, I won't spend too much words here. I will let the guys continue the show. I'll pass the words to Carlos Pedroso, who is our SPE Brazil section president. Carlos, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Max. In fact, it's an honor to me to be here tonight as the SPE Brazil section chairman, because we have the honor to receive two of the best communicators of SPE, that is Nathan and Cesar. And Nathan is a former SPE International president. He has been in Brazil, well, 2 years ago, I believe. I have the chance to receive him because I was the vice president of the section. And he is a very famous writer also. He wrote the most read paper in 2020, but I will let this to Victor tell the history. And Cesar is was the Latin American director. In fact, he made the last regional meeting today. So it's an honor to me to welcome you. Thank you very much for your presence, and good night, everyone. Thank you for coming for this event. I really believe that it will be unforgettable. Thank you very much. Rodrigo, please, could you tell us about this SPE Web Talks?
Sure. Thank you so much, Carlos and Pedroso, and welcome everyone. Good night, everyone. I won't take long. Just a really quick intro before I pass in to Victor to introduce our distinguished guests and Max. So a huge thank you to all the team of young professionals and the entire Brazil section that helped us set up the event. We're truly honored to have Cesar and Nathan. I think they're, from Nathan's shirt and background and Cesar's Brazilian flag, you could say they're the most Carioca International SPE officers, and it's not every day that we have the regional officer and one of the most well-known former SPE international presidents. We've been trying to have this SPE series number 10 for a long time, because it's, as Victor will later describe, it's one of the top downloaded papers for 2020, and it's kind of addresses the big elephant in the room in a very good, and also I think in my point of view, positive way. So it's we have a great lecture here for today for you guys, and remember to sign up to our channel and send all your questions that you might have through the YouTube chat. We'll be gathering them, and later Max will be holding with Victor the Q&A at the end. So thank you so much, guys, and I pass the word to Victor, which will be our honoring moderator. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you, Rodrigo. Thank you, Pedroso. As we can see, it's quite challenging moderation here with these such two guys. I really thank you for the opportunity. So would you like to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening for everyone, depend of location. I assume that we have a global audience today. So again, welcome to our SPE Web Talk number 10. So if you didn't watch the others 9, we have it available in our YouTube channel. So for those you don't know me, my name is Victor Alves. I'm KM specialist at Technip FMC, and I'm also a former SPE Brazil officer in social media internet, now led by Max. So it's my pleasure to serve as the moderator for today's webinar. And the session will be, just a reminder to you all, the session is recorded and available for playback in our YouTube channel later today. So I start our webinar today with a question. Would you recommend that your son or daughter go into petroleum engineering? So this is the same question that our guest today, Nathan Meehan, asked in his seminal paper, which name our webinar today, The End of Petroleum Engineering as We Know It. So, and this question is being asked by SPE president and senior executives for decades. And for most of the last 40 years, the answer has been positive. However, how realistic is a positive response today? So to help us respond to this question, and would you like to join today Dr. Nathan Meehan and Cesar Pacino, as well introduced by Mike Pedroso. So just before I hand over to them, let me just quickly read here their mini bio. That was challenging to make it short, but because they are well senior executives in our industry. So Nathan is president of CMG Petroleum Consulting, an energy advisory firm and senior technology advisor for Petro AI, a leading oil field data analytics firm. He was formerly president of Gaffney, Klein and Associates and a senior executive at Baker Hughes. He has served as the 2016 president of Society of Petroleum Engineers, and Dr. Meehan holds a PhD in petroleum engineering for Standard University and has all kinds of awards and publication. He is best known for the SPE selfie. So, and now let's introduce Cesar Pacino. He's leader of the former leader of Latin American, Caribbean region, and the petroleum engineer, MBA, Master Innovation Studies at the Government Innovation Technology and Knowledge Management. And he has 23 years old of experience in the oil and gas industry. He works for Ecopetrol, Professional, EOR, Technology Group, Technology Strategy Unit, Senior Petrophysics, Reservoir Engineer, G&G, and Operations Manager and Waterford. Wireline, Schlumberger, Mossoró, Brazil, LA&C, Africa, and Europe. He's founder of the SPE Young Professional Colombia, SPE WLA, CAFE chapter, Innovative Ideas at Colombia and Latin American Caribbean sector, advisor on EOR, strategic innovative clustering and entrepreneurship proposals in the frame of new technology trends. Vision with a great base on sustainability and social value added. So we have a pleasure to have you here with us. So I hand over to you. The screen are yours.
All right. Well, actually, we have another guest on. I was going to ask Stephen Glenn to maybe introduce himself and say a few words because I don't get a chance to brag on him very often. You can introduce yourself and explain the context of why you have this connection.
Oi, boa tarde, boa noite todo mundo. Eu sou o genro de Dr. Meehan e ele queria que eu falasse alguma coisa para vocês. Eu sou um engenheiro de poços para o ExxonMobil e agora estou trabalhando para programa de exploração no Rio de Janeiro e para explorar e esperemos que achamos algum óleo no Brasil para ajudar seu país. E o Dr. Meehan, ele tem muito orgulho de mim porque eu falo um pouco de português. E também eu sou na indústria que ele quer que todo mundo trabalhar e fazer melhor para ajudar o mundo inteiro. É uma indústria muito bem. E ele quer que eu falasse alguma coisa para vocês. E ele tem muito orgulho dessa indústria e tem muito sabedoria e palavras de sabedoria para todos para vocês. Então, Nathan, it's all yours.
All right, thank you very much. Well, in case you didn't figure that out, that's my son-in-law, and he's most importantly, the father of 6 of my grandchildren. So today I want to talk to you about this topic, the end of petroleum engineering. And the most important part about that title is as we know it. This is not the end of petroleum engineering. This is a change in the type of what petroleum engineers do, who they are, and what they'll do. I didn't just come to Brazil 3 years ago. I've been coming to Brazil for for over 20 years. And it's one of my favorite places. I take lots of pictures every time I go there. Try to get little artistic shots there. Sometimes my camera's not that great, but my favorite part about Brazil is seeing the students and getting a chance to travel to the different universities. And the one place in Brazil that I really have yet to go to is Manaus, that I'm looking forward to. So I love the food. I love the people there, the students. And I have a little video here that I think I can play. Hi, this is Nathan Meehan, 2016 SPE president. I'm here in the beautiful city of Rio de Janeiro at UFRJ. And I'm here with the winners of the regional qualifying tournament in Argentina and last year's international champions, UFRJ. And they want to throw down a challenge to anybody out there that thinks they've got a chance against them this fall in San Antonio. And so they've got this for you. And if you think you got a chance, post your own video to give them a response. So what do you guys say? Well said. Hi, this is Nathan. All right. Yes.
We didn't see your video, just the sound. So if you could please share the screen with the video, I think is better.
Okay. How do I? Let's go. What is my what do I need to do there? Can you see it now?
Now we are seeing the video.
Okay, well, I'm just going to do it. How about right now? You see it now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, let's see if it works. Hi, this is Nathan Meehan, 2016 SPE president. I'm here in the beautiful city of Rio de Janeiro at UFRJ. And I'm here with the winners of the regional qualifying tournament in Argentina and last year's international champions, UFRJ. And they want to throw down a challenge to anybody out there that thinks they've got a chance against them this fall in San Antonio. And so they've got this for you. And if you think you got a chance, post your own video to give them a response. So what do you guys say? Okay. I hope that was okay. All right.
Yes, it was okay.
All right, good. Well, then let me go ahead and go on. Well, let's see how. Hi, this is. Well, there we go. All right. So as was mentioned, that article that I wrote, The End of Petroleum Engineering as We Know It, that was the most downloaded article for all of 2019. And which just proves to you that a really good title gets more downloads than any good technical content. And they're really, the context of this is that.
Sorry, may I interrupt just a second? Because could you please switch the presentation mode on the top?
Okay.
On this display settings.
Okay.
Right on the top.
Display settings. I'm looking for.
Yeah, top left. Yeah, you can go to the presentation mode. Press F5.
Okay. Okay, are you seeing this?
Yes, just go on the top left of your screen.
Well, see, my top left is.
Yes, click there. The other on the other side, the other button.
Display
yes,
setting.
Click there. Yes, swap presenter view and slideshow.
All right. Now we got it.
Great.
Yes, we got it now.
All right. Sorry about that. We'll hope we won't show that video again. Hi, this is. So in any event, this is where we were on the End of Petroleum Engineering as We Know It. The context of this, of course, is that energy remains vitally important everywhere. The number one determinant of quality of life, whether it's access to clean water, access to electricity, literacy, infant mortality, child mortality, every measure of quality of life, including in this case, gross national income per person, is strongly correlated with energy use. And the vast majority of the world's population, at least the future growth in the world's population, is in the lower left of this corner. And this is where, and they plan to not only, this is where the big growth from, when we go from 7 billion people to 9 billion people over the next 30 years, most of this growth will happen here. And so they will not only be trying to be using more because there are more people, but they're going to be trying to move up in terms of quality of life. And so they will be using more per capita. And while we don't know what the future really holds for the energy mix, we anticipate coal to continue to decline. Coal has to decline for us to achieve any of the climate goals. All the coal growth is going to be in third world countries. The real question is how much oil demand is going to drop. The drop in oil demand is going to be driven strongly by a decrease in transportation, partially offset, and we don't really know how much, by the use of oil for other products. So our primary product is going to be declining in demand, but you can see the decline is actually going to be relatively shallow. So this is not like, oil demand is going away. It's not even like coal demand is going away. This is driven partly because of $3 trillion that's been spent on renewables from government subsidies and other investments. Every time we've tried to make a forecast, for example, this bottom black line is the forecast in 2006 for solar capacity. In 2008 and 12, every year, including this year, we've had to raise the forecast for solar and wind. You've seen the prices variability in oil and gas. This blue line is the spot price for crude oil. And throughout the 80s and through the 90s, crude oil was like $20 a barrel. It actually dropped down to the low teens at one point. Drilling activity, both internationally and US, changed, didn't really go very much, but hit a low spot right here at the teens, after which point natural gas drilling increased because of the unconventionals in North America and because of increased gas prices. Crude oil prices followed. And of course, the crude oil drilling activity followed that. It wasn't until we'd had $100 oil for some period of time here that crude oil drilling activity really peaked. And that's when our peak was. And then, of course, we had this collapse in prices, started to recover. And of course, we are now at the situation where we are. The same thing happened internationally. However, it's not been as pronounced. This orange curve is the Latin American curve. And while oil prices were increasing here, they did increase during that collapse. The problem is oil and gas drilling in Latin America has not recovered. Hasn't recovered in most places internationally. The international drilling activity that it recovered the most strongly was in the Middle East. So, but what we're really talking about in the title of this is the problem of oil and gas and being a petroleum engineer. Oil and gas was once seen as one of the best careers, but we've seen a decline in how attractive it's been. There have been such huge layoffs, cyclical demand. A lot of petroleum engineers find themselves challenged to find jobs in other industries. The visualization that the oil and gas greenhouse gas emissions are responsible for climate change. People believe that oil and gas will be declining in the future. And of course, fracking. The people hate fracking. That's of course what I do. Now, I'm going to give you a couple examples of but if you don't believe that engineering disciplines can go away, let's look at mining engineers. Before petroleum engineers were the highest paid salaries, mining engineers were, and there was strong demand for them. There declined from thousands of graduates in the 1990 each year to 500 in 2014, and it's going to be less than 150 this year in terms of how many universities are offering mining programs. They're dropping. Commodity prices for most metals and most mining property prices have dropped. They're highly cyclical, and the mining industry lays off constantly. Mining engineers also pretty much just work as mining engineers. There was a job called Textile Engineering. When I was a student at Georgia Tech in the early 1970s, Textile Engineering had almost 100% placement of its graduates. Basically, they were in high demand. Today, we produce 5 times as much textiles as we did in 1975, but only one US university even has a degree program in textile engineering. Average salaries are in the toilet. The average salary for a experienced textile engineer is about like the entry-level salary for mechanical and chemical engineers. So we're going to see big changes. And one of the biggest changes I've noticed is what's required for petroleum engineers today. You know, when I talk to students and I talk about supply chain and big data, nanotechnologies, material sciences, and all these other topics, they didn't learn about that as undergraduates. There's really no room in the undergraduate programs for these. Students today are digitally savvy and know that the industry's changed and that digital stuff is more important, yet they're not getting they're not getting digital jobs when they come around. Education for petroleum engineers is evolving very slowly. It's a battleship that turns very slowly, and maybe that's fine. There are some speculations that, you know, like geologists and geophysicists, entry-level engineers will have master's degrees in the future. All right, so a lot of engineering jobs have actually declined. Here's architectural engineering, nuclear engineering. Petroleum engineering historically has been increasing. We're going to see over the short term a decline. My first thesis is that in the future, we will need not a highly growth rate of petroleum engineers, but we're going to need fewer. But when I say fewer, I mean fewer than are being graduated historically from the combined oil and gas all around the world in terms of graduates. Textile, mining, aerospace, nuclear engineering all share some things. They are closely associated with just one industry, just like we are. And they have cyclical layoffs, large layoffs that make a lot of the best and the brightest think about joining something else. And some of them, like architectural engineering, have been displaced because of sophisticated tools. And the old way of doing petroleum engineering is going to be displaced by digital tools. We don't expect petroleum engineers to be automated. We expect our jobs to be highly leveraged so that one engineer can do the job that 10 or 20 engineers used to be doing in terms of, say, pump design or pump management, or many of the things that we do. We expect a lot greater efficiencies, which means we're going to need either, if we don't have fewer engineers on doing that other stuff, we've got to find something else for them to do. And we think that we can use digital tools to actually augment and do a better job of what petroleum engineers do. But the answer is no doubt adapt or be left behind. But to me, the big data issue, AI things, that's not the biggest challenge we face. The biggest challenge we face is the need to decarbonize the energy system. For us to keep oil and gas to remain relevant, there is, in my opinion, overwhelming scientific evidence, observational evidence, and global engagement that says around the world, people are recognizing that we have to do a better job in being sustainable. Now, I have a big, long talk. If any of you have questions about whether or not greenhouse gas emissions from the oil and gas actually make a significant contributions to climate change, I would hope you would look at that carefully. I certainly did. I didn't believe it, 10 or 15 years ago. But the more time I spend talking to meteorologists, talking to scientists, and less time I spend listening to people argue on Facebook, I am increasingly convinced that we have to do something to make that change. There are millions of people worldwide. And if you look at carbon emissions globally, the US carbon emissions have actually been going down. I'm going to explain why that is in a minute. China's been going up and somewhat stabilizing off. But during this time period, the Chinese were adding 1 coal-fired power plant per week, over 50 a year. India is growing and continues to grow and will be more than the US in not that many years. So the world's total is not decreasing. In fact, if you look, this is the cumulative CO2 emissions over time. And you can see that this black line is essentially the do nothing case. And these pink and dark pink bars are the probabilities of exceeding 2 degrees and 3 degrees above pre-industrial levels. Now, there's going to be problems with 2 degrees. If the world exceeds 3 degrees, it doesn't matter which of the models you believe, this is going to be very serious and very wide impacts. A lot of people are talking about trying to keep it below 1.5 degrees. I don't think there's any chance of that. But it only takes about a 4% per year reduction in carbon emissions, plus efficiencies and renewables, for us to be able to have a reasonable chance of keeping the planet below that 2 degrees level. And we know that one of the things that we can do by increasing natural gas production, we can lower CO2 emissions. This scale makes it look a little better for what the US has been doing. Because of this unconventional gas production that increased, all of these wells, horizontal wells with massive hydraulic fracturing, led to this huge increase in gas production and a decrease in coal-fired power plants. And that led to this decrease in CO2 emissions. The largest decrease in CO2 emissions globally has all been driven by hydraulic fracturing. One other thing that we know can work is a price on carbon. Now, whether that's a tax or a price, it's hard to say. And right now, natural gas prices are so low that if you have access to natural gas, it really makes sense to make electricity from gas instead of coal. But even in places like central India and China, where landed LNG prices, by the time they're transported, are relatively high, at even a relatively high gas price, it doesn't take a very large carbon price to make coal plants less attractive than gas. And if we are able to do that around the world, we're going to make a significant impact. Another thing we need to do is decrease the carbon intensity of oil and gas. One of the studies I participated with in this paper I co-authored with some people from Stanford, actually they did almost all the work. This is carbon intensity. And what carbon intensity is the amount of CO2 per unit of energy. You could think of it in pounds of CO2 per barrel. But this is just from the wells to the refinery. This is not after you burn it and use it. So this is where the largest variability exists. And the black X's are the totals. And all of the colored components are where they are. And the largest single component is venting, flaring, and fugitives. Now, there are some other places where you have some very large issues. I can give you this reference if you want to dig into the details, but as you look around the world, countries like Venezuela, where there's a lot of thermal, a lot of flaring, these are problematic. Canada's got a lot of heavy oil. They also have to pump a lot of diluents to get this heavy oil through pipelines. Also, SAGD, a lot of thermal energy. U.S. is driven primarily by flaring and unconventionals. Lots of flaring here throughout the Middle East. But in Saudi Arabia, what you have is very low carbon intensity because there's a high oil production per wells. And so one of the things that the biggest single problem with carbon intensity is flaring. This is carbon intensity by country, SCF per barrel flared. And so you see Iraq and Egypt, Venezuela, very high. If you look at the grand total amount of gas flared, Russia is the largest one. Not that it's just because they have so much oil production and a relatively high flaring. Nigeria has actually improved. Unfortunately, Venezuela has not improved. Iran and Iraq are both committed to improve. Iraq imports fuel to make electricity. Unbelievable. And they burn a lot of their oil that they could use for exports and hard currency, and they flare more gas than if they turn that to electricity. They could completely convert all that. So so another thing that petroleum engineers need to do is help with the decreasing the impact of CO2. If we're going to achieve 2 degrees C, we've got to make major advancements in renewables, in efficiency, and in carbon capture. And the amount of carbon capture that we have to get over time is shown here. Now, the current level of carbon capture is 30 megatons of CO2 per year. That's where we are today, down here on the curve. Now, to get to where we need to by 2035, 2040, we need to get up here. To give you an idea, I don't feel comfortable with what 3.5 gigatons of CO2 is. To give you an idea in terms of volumes, subsurface volumes, that's approximately the same as the global oil production. So we would have to do that, and by 2050, we would have to have injection and storage and monitoring of twice the world's current oil production. The capital required would be more than the cumulative capital of the entire oil industry. And the only people that know how to do that, that know how to characterize those reservoirs, that know how to gather and separate and transport, inject, and monitor to make sure that that stays in the right place is petroleum engineers. So we have this huge future, not only to improve the sustainability of oil and gas, to digitize and digitalize the environment, add a lot of AI tools, but we also need to lead the way in carbon capture and storage. So we are vital for this energy transition. We've got to develop less carbon intensive. We've got to get rid of flaring and methane leakage. We've got to kill off coal. Sorry, President Trump, if you think you can get West Virginia votes from me. We've got to do carbon capture and storage that's hundreds of times where we are now, and leverage big data. And then we've got to figure out net zero emission opportunities for fossil fuels. So thank you very much. I'll turn the time over to Cesar.
So thank you, Nathan. Great presentation. I think you summarized well the challenge that you have. Now I hand over to Cesar, who will continue to speak about this. And I would like to remind everyone that you can send your questions that we'll take it on at the end of our presentation, okay? The mic is yours, Cesar.
You got to mute, unmute.
Yeah, you're mute.
Thank you very much. Really an honor to be here today. Pleasure to be together here on my first location. Obrigado. Boa noite. Eu fiquei a Mossoró la première fois que j'ai sorti de mon location, et c'est la première expérience que j'ai fait para trabalhar a Brasil. Muito obrigado. Switch to English better. Okay, thank you very much. Just thank you, Nathan. It's an honor to be here with you on this SPE Live, and thank you all the invitees to allow me for be part here tonight with our SPE Brazilian family. The end of petroleum engineering as we know it. I just would like to bring some of the points as we have been facing. Petroleum engineering has been part of the human history. Humanity started to grow in energy needs. We have been replacing cutting forests. We used to use a lot of wood before on the needs of the society. We transferred to an industrial and wells, oil system that using, so we replaced the wells that was using to bring oil in the system. And we are today part of the energy transition as continue the society needs. In that sense, what means? Our society had been evolved from one society that was starting with agriculture, primary conditions. Then we go with our society 2.0 that came more productive related to the use of the agrarian society. Then we moved into the industrial society, then into the information society that bring computer systems, and we are today in a society 5.0. We are part of the society. Like petroleum engineer, we have been evolved with this one. Our humanity have been looking forward always for resources, to have energy, to have consumption of these energies that require a person per day. Before coal, this go in 5.2 kilowatts. Today, we are around per person 279 kilowatts. That means we need energy. Agree how we are living today. Tonight we are connected each other and we are consuming energy. Each click, each activity we are using is something that we have been putting together. And the consumption comes higher. And still we have societies that still are on agricultural society 2.0. So that means the evolutions require that we satisfy how a petroleum engineer should continue on this evolution. Today, we have a challenge. Yes, we have a challenge that the humanity is looking not only into the petroleum engineering, going into all the needs we have. And what is related to? Is related to the industrial revolution. We did already an industrial revolution to grow, to develop. Now we have to do the industrial revolution before it's too late. And what that means? That means we need to bring nature. We need to bring sustainability. We need to bring in our concept these different links that put together our knowledge. And today we have a challenge that is in the frame of the Sustainable Development Goals. We have 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And like petroleum engineer, and part of the society 5.0, we are part of that one. And we should collect all our knowledge, technology, and the lessons that we already did for the previous society needs to improve our baseline and to contribute about not only automation, not only to get the solutions to the decarbonized revolution industry as we have been facing is the need of the current society. Our frame of our companies is still going and part of the portfolio of the energy. And our companies are related to majors, independents, international, national oil companies, and national oil companies. We still have reserves, productions, and investments on the different actions. And the petroleum engineer career is part of that one. Our national companies, like Petrobras, like Ecopetrol, like PDVSA, like the different national companies that we have in Latin America, has a lot of strategy to accomplish the energy demand of our society. And we, like petroleum engineer, we should continue working on that one. We are part of this frame, and we have to bring all the lessons that we have been put together with majors, independents, NOCs, and NOCs. Today, reservoirs have been changing from conventional to unconventional and to different new resources, no Darcy flows conditions that come out of this spectrum. But bringing these assets together has a lot of potential that we should continue, like petroleum engineering, working on. But the reality as well is we need to switch to a scenario that requires less emissions. And the power sector that is providing the energy about our society is still going on and bringing these options in renewable power, nuclear ones, fossil fuel powers, electricity, and oil, gas, coal, and biofuels and biogas are still part of that ones. And investments are still going on. Like petroleum engineers, we should continue working on that one and look how we can develop a better sustainable scenario, a sustainable scenario that with the SDG we can work together and continue doing. That means for us like petroleum engineer, there is a lot to do like petroleum engineer to reduce the environmental footprints of our own operations. Today, most of the emissions we have been producing related to methane reductions that we should work on. We should apply engineering. We should apply concepts about how we can do capture sequestration, how we can do reducing flaring, venting, and how do the switch into the oil and gas and use more gas and found more gas for our resources. And we have to improve efficiencies and change this type and optimize these processes that we can put together in our oil and gas industry. So for petroleum engineers, we have still a task to be done. Hydrocarbon is still part of the portfolio and it's something that we should continue on. Our current reservoirs around the world are, as you know, like petroleum engineers, like in reservoir matters, there is a declination, a natural declination for the fields, and it's around 8%. If we don't know anything about it, if we don't apply technology, if we don't apply our petroleum engineering knowledge, this is going to go down. But still the global demand in a sustainable developing way require a supply that we should provide. And this gap, this option that we need to work together require petroleum engineers. And it's why we need to work on that one. Either is on sustainable development frame that we should work on. Today, different companies, as we have been seeing, we have majors, we have independents, NOCs, and international NOCs. Some of that ones are already doing the transition. And many with the transition are enhancing traditional oil and gas operations. And in this frame of enhancing traditional oil and gas operations, we are part of that one, like petroleum engineers. So there is a lot of things to do. So I really encourage all our students, our petroleum engineers, to be working on that one. And not only enhance the traditional oil and gas operations, it's as well to deploy new methods, systems that allow carbon capture sequestrations and different centralized emissions that we need to provide. We can do it with the different technologies and techniques that we can apply. But as well, we can do generating productivity for our companies because we are part of the business. And as well, we have to have a win-win scenarios where our companies, our society, and our energy consumption requirements need to be done. Supplying liquid and gases for energy transition is something that we should continue, and we should do in this transition from fuel to energy companies. But as well, there is some portfolios that people are doing, people is working, our companies are doing, and some of the companies are using the knowledge that have been acquired, like petroleum engineer area, to move to the other energies. We have the great examples, like trying to use solar floating systems, wind generation floating system using the same structure and framework like we have from the offshore platforms. So there is a lot of cross technology that we can put together like an option. So into the business strategy we have, there is still a place for petroleum engineering that we should work on. And in this place as well, we have been getting this place related to the energy we are producing. Yes, it's something that the society is doing. Yes, but as well, we are part of the society. And our petroleum engineers, the ones that I am visiting from the different student chapter sections around Latin America, are aware of that one. There, I found the students studying how apply nuclear, how apply hydro, winds, solar, and efficiency gas processes into the processes of the oil and gas industry. So we can put together all this type of technology, and as well, we can see how we can continue doing. The methane emissions of our society continue, but we can see most of the methane emissions are related to the natural process of wetlands, is related to agriculture, and in our energy sector, we have been some methane emissions. If we reduce these ones, we are going to be part on the short part of the generation of the large sources of anthropogenic or methane emissions. So we have a lot of work to do, and we have a lot of things to continue. But it's not only the oil and gas industry. It's not only the fuels industry. All the energy sector require measurements. And these measurements has to be aligned to what the society today is requiring. As Nathan said before, we cannot go further than 2% on these emissions. So it's something that we should work together and how we can put, and as we have been seeing the different graphs, the emissions are coming not only from our industry, are coming from the different sectors, and we should work together. And we have technology to do it, we have knowledge to apply, and it's something that I really would like to encourage. Today are coming more jobs related to these new energies, and it's something that I really would like that our petroleum engineers and our universities put into the competences program and curriculums to develop as well. It develop knowledge about the new alternative energies. We have been facing some conditions where our water had been produced hydrogen and using this hydrogen energy like part of the process. Or we have CCUs processes and different new units that we develop. So bringing this knowledge in our pension, bringing this opportunity as well, as we are part of the petroleum engineering and moving activity is something that we should continue doing. The efficiency is going to be continued. Petroleum engineer has a space to have efficiency processes, efficiency gas come into the new era of the new energies into the systems. We have been facing around the world that we have hybrid processes. These hybrid processes acquire solar plants, solar areas or projects that can reduce the emissions, but as well can increase efficiency on the lifting cost of the barrels. We have solar plants using for some oil fields. We have geothermal conditions. We have nuclear or wind offshore conditions that are supporting the oil and gas production and as well supporting the energy production. So it's something that we should doing, continue and doing. Looking into this environment, I actually create an equation that I would like to share with you tonight. Petroleum is equal to hydrocarbon. Taking this origin like a factor, hydrocarbon is carbon plus hydrogen. If we put our engineering concept into this equation, engineering hydrocarbon become with equal to engineering of the carbon and engineering of the hydrogen. Engineering comes with ingenious. Ingenious hydrocarbon require ingenious on carbon and ingenious on hydrogen. This handle and management of the economic on hydrocarbon come with the economic on carbon and economic in hydrogen. Then we apply a factor of oxygen that is part of the system that we have it. So we will have economic on energy because when we apply combustion system and oxygen to hydrocarbons, this produces energy. But as well, that means we have now an economic on CO2. And it's something that today there is a lot of taxes, there is a lot of projects related to how we handle CO2. And as well, there is a lot of economic that come related to H2O, water management economic. So on this matter, we have this option like petroleum engineer. And we have the concept, we have the knowledge to do it, and we can handle and manage this transformation from hydrocarbon to energy to economic on CO2 and economic on water. This comes with the concept that if we bring all this basic knowledge of fluids, like petroleum engineer, at different scale, from nano to giga, with the same basic concepts that we have like petroleum engineer, applying chemistry, mass flow, energy balance is something that we can do together, and we can work for the energy future. And with Engineers, we can bring energy elements to be working on and to be part of that one. Efficiency and optimized processes with control emissions control, reserves, carbon intensity, energy generation, and energy portfolio of water management and CO2 management. So coming with these ones is an equation that we can do it, but we should always keep in mind that we are part of the world and in a sustainable manner. And earth science plus engineering can put together fluids, minerals, elements, because we still have a lot of potential to discover and to develop from our G&G and geosciences that we have. When we read a log and we go into my wireline background, we run it, spectral gamma ray or resistivity log or nuclear logs. We found different mineral elements in conjunction with the different fluids that we would like to produce. So try to understand more these minerals, this chemistry, this physics, these processes will become a petroleum engineering 5.0. This is petroleum engineering 5.0 on the frame of sustainability, has to bring the concept of effluents, emulsions, resource integration, CCS, gas, geo, how I apply geoscience together, methane emissions control, safety, transparency, and a global collaboration that we, like oil and gas industry, we have it. And this, we have it in different technical disciplines. Is something that where SPE can support us as well to continue growing like petroleum engineering. And it really encourages you to integrate all the technical disciplines we have it on the frame of SPE as well, that belongs to completions, drilling, data science, engineering analytics, facility designs and constructions, and continuum health, safety, environment, and sustainability management, productions and operations, and reservoir to be part of the growing and integration on how us, like petroleum engineer, can continue in a society 5.0. Petroleum society in Latin America has been over most of the countries we have in our region. So proud of that. We have the knowledge, the competences, and a good family network. Like tonight, we are now here in this great Brazilian family to continue doing it. Integrate our petroleum engineer perspective is more for the future. We have been part of our subsurface and our geoscience and engineering and processes knowledge, which will continue. There is a lot of journeys that we can take together to continue to develop a petroleum engineering career. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, great. Great presentation, Cesar. Thanks for bringing this to us. I think everyone liked the benefit from such presentations. I think both presented the challenges and also the solutions, some of the solutions to come up with this. So I have here, we received a lot of questions, so I will try to group most of them because we have questions about the career, we have questions about energy, the clean energy and renewable, about regulation. So let's start here with the first. So that's for both of you if you want, and it's quite important as well. How to deal with the exploring of such large and strategic reserves as the pre-salt layer in Brazil, at the same time that there is such a strong pressure for renewable energy sources.
All right, let me take a little bit of that. If you look carefully, there's a paper that I'm working now. It's going to come out in Nature magazine with the same Stanford people, and I assume that some of you have run across this idea that at a high enough carbon price, there would be reserves left behind. And there's no question that a significant carbon price would leave some reserves behind because if nothing else, the economic limit would be there. But if you had a global carbon price, a lot of the Venezuelan resources would not be commercial because they have so much carbon intensity for them. And one of the things that we see is not only do we have this challenge of oil declining, but we have a need for not only more to fill that gap, but more to fill it with a low carbon intensity. And one of the ways that you can get low carbon intensity is high rates per well and no flaring or venting. And so, you have this challenge with CO2. There's a reasonable high amount of CO2 in some of the associated gas, but there are ways to, presuming that is not vented and that goes, and that you eliminate flaring and venting in that operations, you actually monitor those, you can get some very low carbon intensity. And Brazilian offshore pre-salt crude could, in fact, position itself among the cleanest of oil producing opportunities globally. And I haven't really seen these numbers. The numbers we have in the study, in case you were looking at them, are actually for onshore Brazil. Those don't reflect the majority of the production. Brazilian production in the pre-salt is gone. If it's not at 4 million barrels a day now, it will be soon. So it's much more important that we have a significant amount of oil production that has low carbon intensity, the cleanest essentially of the oils. So we move away from a lot of the least efficient thermal. We move away from the oil and gas that has venting associated with it, and that has a very high energy component associated with production, extraction, transportation. So I think having a strategic resource like the pre-salt could actually help position Brazil in terms of a more sustainable role compared with some of the other opportunities around the world. So, it has to be done right, but you don't get opportunities this large very many places in the whole world. It's a amazing resource.
Okay, thank you, Nathan. Do you want to speak, Cesar? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Victor. It's about I get opportunity to visit Campinas, Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo, Alagoas, and I have been in the students' chapters and universities on the research part. Seeing what you had done, developed, related, how bring the different capabilities and how you can put together the current challenge with the resources you have for the pre-salt that we have in the pre-salt, because actually, like Ecopetrol, we had part as well on that area as well. It's an amazing opportunity that we can put together. And as I say, if we bring this CO2 management plus hydrogen management plus the geoscience together, we will find solutions to handle and to get the best productivity of the reservoir we have. We have, yes, today, task credit challenges, but as well, if we see and put our projects, how we do the right balance of this knowledge and how we can produce with the research and development we are doing and the technology we are applying, I think we can add value in our reserves that we have in the result. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Cesar. Thank you, Nathan. So in line with this, we have here a question that is more or less the same topic. It's how oil hub cities like Houston and Rio as well will be affected after reducing 10 to 1 petroleum engineers and other professionals with digital transformation. Will hub cities exist based on teleworking growth?
Well, I exist, of course. Actually, the good news is that for Houston and for Rio is that their dependence on oil is not what it once was. Rio never really was. Aberdeen, Midland, Oklahoma City, some of these cities are New Orleans much harder hit with the reduction. In fact, a lot of offices that were scattered, you might have had an Oklahoma City office and a Fort Worth office and a Midland office, and people would consolidate those in Houston. And a lot of the people who might have had offices in various places in Africa, they're consolidated in Paris or London. So what we're seeing is some consolidation. We're also seeing, of course, some diversification. Rio really has a lot more diverse economy than oil. Houston is far more diverse than it once was, with the medical centers and a lot of the technology research. But I think that the other change we're seeing is that with the digital world, we're seeing a lot more people from Palo Alto and from other places. And at one point, a lot of the digital stuff came out of the Silicon Valley. But we're starting to see participants in the digitization from a lot of parts of the world. You don't have to be in Palo Alto to come up with good ideas for digital. The other thing is starting to see it's increasingly, it doesn't matter where you are. So these cities we don't know how cities are going to be rethought in a post-COVID-19 world. Let's say that in 2 years, nobody has COVID-19. It's just, whether it's just careful or it's run its course. Nobody has the Spanish flu today, and the Spanish flu at one time was terrible. So at some point, COVID-19 will be gone. Do you think that we will all go back to exactly the way we were, commuting to offices, and Zoom will go bankrupt? I mean, I don't think so. I think this has induced a real change, and a real change in how people work. Now, clearly, a lot of people are going to go back to work. But I don't think people are going to fly and travel the way they used to. It used to be nothing for a lot of us to get together and, okay, it's time for a meeting. Let's go to London, and lots of people would gather up and go. I think more of this stuff will wind up teleconferencing. We're used to this now. I don't like it very much. I like to be there with you. I like to eat the food. I like to walk on the beach. But and I will, but probably the next time I'll be a tourist. And for work, we'll still be doing some of this. So maybe that answered that question. Maybe it didn't.
Okay, Cesar, do you want to reply this one as well?
Opportunity for jobs and how the current situation affect our jobs. I think it has been challenged us. We have been seeing Nathan. Nathan is today in Rio de Janeiro virtually. So either you cannot feel it, the sensation, but it's something that as well, be together and be closer is something that the new reality has been allowing us. And either we have now 2 or 3 times more meetings, because now we don't have restrictions related to rooms, because each room is just a click. So we have now infinite rooms. There is a lot of tasks that have been done, a lot of tasks that we can put together. So bring a common ideas to develop, I think we'll have more opportunities to develop careers and jobs preference. Maybe, sure, some ones are going to be coded, some ones are going to be changing to more virtual or automotive conditions and industrial applications, but as well is something that we should take advantage on that one, because now we have been seeing now there is a lot of challenge that we have been not facing as much as we would like to do it before. So if we can put some of our tasks, some of our routinary processes on a digital system, in something application we had like petroleum engineer with our knowledge, more space and room to bring more ideas with the new challenges and how we do this transition. So moving into the different jobs, we are going to have changes. We're having changes right now, and our society is doing. But applying and taking the opportunity what the new normal is bringing us, I think it's something that we should do it to try to keep or create new jobs. There is a lot of opportunity as well to create new opportunities and jobs.
Okay, thank you, Cesar. In line with this, let me ask you. You spoke about some things about career and opportunities. So the next question is about this. So it's a clustering of three questions, in fact, because there are three questions about career. So which factor do you think has the highest impact on petroleum engineer jobs such as automation, AI, oil price, oil production, demand, and etc.? Which factor has the most impact? And in line with this, what is your advice for petroleum engineering graduates and students, as well as for their university? How should a young professional in the oil and gas industry shape their career into this new era of energy? So these three questions, it's about what are the main factors that impacts the career of them, and how they can be prepared, not just the student, but also the young professionals.
You want to go first, Cesar?
Okay, thank you. Sure. It's as I state on the question created only for this webinar, was related to CO2 and how we handle CO2, how we put our knowledge either from the subsurface, wellhead, surface, transport, refinery, and all the chain value we have it. So there is a lot of opportunities that we take this homework like part of our new activities and roles and competencies to be developed either with the students, new fresh out careers, and it's something that we have a room and something to improve and continue doing. Other things as well, water management. We have water management, but today water management as well can be a source of energy. We bring water in a full set, or as well we bring hydrogen as part of the processes. So there is something that as well. And water management is something that we really know to handle with the processes we have in the oil production industry. We have 90% of water cut on our fields, and how we handle water is something that we should apply now to the knowledge and use this type of systems. Sometimes geothermal conditions due to the temperature of the water and the physical chemistry of the water. There are some chemistry that like lithium come as well with some water production, and lithium is part of the new energy era. So if we just cross this knowledge on CO2, water, with our petroleum engineer, with something that we can do and improve as well our careers. Logically, all these will going connected with the oil demand, but as well with the CO2 taxation. So CO2 taxation is something that is come into the CO2 economy today, and how we handle that one, and as well put in the balance. Okay, now I had to create jobs and how to apply the petroleum knowledge to be part of this system. As Nathan said, there are some reserves that maybe can be trapped if we don't put technology or we don't develop systems to bring more efficiency on that one is something that we should do like petroleum engineers. So bringing knowledge on CO2 management, bringing knowledge on H2 and water management, and how we did technology we develop is something that for sure we should put in our competencies for the near future. This,
I'll follow on a little bit. Let me answer the first question. What the major factors are. Obviously, oil supply and demand and oil prices are closely tied together. Those are highly correlated. But the biggest drivers historically for demand for petroleum engineers have been oil industry activity levels. Okay, so when rig counts go up, when workovers go up, when activity levels go up, that's when people hire more people, and that makes a lot of sense. We're going to see, because of higher productivity, there's a little dampening of that. So you could have a significant increase in activity levels without suddenly needing, you could double a rig count without needing twice as many petroleum engineers. However, over the long term, you're going to need to add them for all the different aspects, the field studies, the reserves, everything there. What we're going to see in terms of career advice, I give the same advice that we had. You need to do something that you're truly excellent at, that you enjoy. And you need to probably over the course of your career, be in a position where you do 2 or 3 or 4 different things well. Careers last a long time. I started work in the oil and gas business when I graduated from college in 1975. I was a summer intern. I was going to get a master's degree. From 75 to now, that's like, what is that, 150 years? It feels like it. And over that period of time, I've been a reservoir engineer. I've been a horizontal well completions guy. I've been a fracking guy. I've been, involved in hydrogen. I've been involved in, acquisitions, et cetera. So as a career, the kind of things that are going to differentiate you are only partially technical. The other soft skill things just aren't to be neglected. You've got to be able to present. You've got to be able to communicate. You've got to be able to identify problems and solve them. But the number one thing is being able to solve new problems. I don't know how to say this any more clearly. Your professors did not prepare you for future problems if they taught you how to solve the problems they know how to solve. Because the kind of problems that you're going to have to solve are ones that don't even exist yet. We don't know what they are. So the most important thing is being able to think and apply those fundamental engineering principles. And when you're able to do that, identify problems, find ways to suck cost out of a solution, increase production, lower CO2 emissions, whatever the solution is, you come up with new ideas so that you're going to create value for your employer. You're going to find opportunities yourself. You're going to drive yourself. You're going to become an entrepreneur. You're going to become a consultant. All the different kind of pathways that you might go are better if you're able to solve new problems and hard problems. So instead of, telling you, oh, production engineering is more solid because it's not tied as much to rig count, true. That doesn't do any good if you're not the kind of production engineer that really innovates. So this sort of innovation, and the best sort of place where we exchange this information, of course, is SPE. So there's my plug for SPE.
Okay, thank you so much. So we are running out of time. So we have time for one question. And this question is about regulation. So it's about the government policies. How oil companies have to respond to the shareholders. Example, invest money in profitable projects. How will carbon capture and storage become profitable? Does this depend on government policies?
Actually, today there is a CO2 economy, and this CO2 economy comes from $8 to $150, depends on the emissions you can control, and this will multiply by the volumes. So we can put this economy in our projects and make this one can go through to the different balance. And as well, it's not only the emissions control we are going to do, we are going to generate energy as well. We are going to continue generating the progress for our society of the value of our economics. So yes, governments are changing now, are creating that one. Some countries in Latin America are already doing it. There's some countries that has bigger taxation on that economic, on CO2 that is coming related as well. I stay on how we can be ingenious and bring this value and economy in our projects economically.
Let me follow on with that. There's three ways that basically that you can do that. And of course, the first way is one Cesar talked about, is when there is a carbon price, a carbon tax, something like that. Now, carbon prices, as he pointed out, range from trivial prices, and frankly, less than $25 a barrel is trivial. It doesn't change behavior. There's not enough at $25 a ton. It's not enough to really make you do CO2 storage and capture. The number that's going to be commercial for that on a wide scale basis is much higher. It's probably $75 to $100 a ton. Very, very few places have numbers like that. There are tax incentives, like in the United States, the 45Q incentive. They're not enough to make this widespread. So if you drive it simply by, is this a profitable investment? It's going to require huge governmental intervention. And that's going to raise the price of oil and gas. And the people that would be paying that tax, that higher price, are predominantly lower income individuals. Okay, the movie stars don't care whether there's $100 tax on their, if that's basically a few extra dollars a gallon. They don't care, but it makes a big difference for a lot of people. There are a couple of other places. The most minor of those, but it's worth noting, is the very cleanest oil companies, particularly for natural gas, to a lesser extent oil, but for natural gas. And potentially, I think for oil, if you make this happen, are able to market their products as green products. If you were able to take all of the carbon equivalent emissions from your oil production and sequester those, offset those with, rainforest that won't be developed, carbon capture and storage, et cetera. If you were able to essentially deliver zero emission oil and gas, you would be able to some extent, command a higher price for that, because some of the consumers are willing to do it. We know this because it's happening. It's not happening on a giant scale, but it is happening. And as we go forward, I expect that to grow. But the third one that I think is really important is that the investors, the World Bank, for example, doesn't loan money to coal projects anymore. And they're likely not, and they won't loan money to any project that flares gas. And there may not be, there are quite a few investors that have just pulled away from oil and gas. We are talking to a lot of investors. When I formerly worked at a large consulting company, and now I work at a microscopic one, but we see investors who clearly, they want to invest in oil and gas in the very cleanest and most sustainable ones. So you may find that in order to get the money to develop your projects, you're going to have to make that step, even if the subsidies don't make carbon capture and storage profitable in its own right. Okay, so those three things, and we'll see them probably in the order of government taxes, subsidies, prices, demand from shareholders and investors, and to a lesser extent, premium products or demand from ultimate consumers. And that's the three things that will drive it. And the first two there are, I really think that based on the questions we're getting and the investor interest, we have that map I showed you that showed all those fields. We studied over 9,000, almost 10,000 fields to do that. Guess what? We also know what the carbon intensity of the different oil and gas companies are. And investors want to know that too. They want to know which company has the most carbon emissions in their reserve base. And they want to invest in the ones that have the lowest carbon intensity of their reserve base. And that's in the future, when that becomes an actual investment criteria, and company A's president realizes that his stock options are not worth as much because he's got a lot of carbon intensity in his reserves, he or she will take actions to improve that. Okay, so that we'll see that happen only as that widespread engagement forces that to happen, and we're seeing it now. We're going to see it significantly more in the future. It's bigger in Europe, but eventually we'll see this more globally. You don't
Sorry,
look like
I was mute. Yeah, now I was mute. Sorry. So let's move to the end. We are top of the hour here to finish it. So I would like to hand you to do the final remarks of our presentation. So I would like to thank you everyone who joined us today. And it's our pleasure to be with us. And for those who didn't watch and know someone that you'll be interested, please forward it to our YouTube channel that the video will be available there soon. Okay, so go ahead, Cesar.
Yes, Victor. I come now with a question for you, for your child, and congratulations for the new baby coming on. Do you
Okay.
advise your kids to continue in the petroleum engineering career?
Yes, I would advise to continue in the energy industry career. I think the energy career is the always the future. We need energy to move the world. So I always will advise my sons and my daughters and my family to work in the energy industry. I think it's a very challenging and the beautiful industry. I love to work in this industry because the thing we do, I think it's one of the best things that we can do to the world, and in terms of what you give, what you can generate, and I think we of course in a more sustainable way that we are, as we mentioned, but yes, I truly advise them to continue in the energy industry.
Like petroleum engineers too. Great, Nathan. We made the homework.
Yes, Nathan, do you like to do any final remarks?
Well, I just want to tell you that I have always loved coming to Brazil. I've had a chance to travel a fair amount of the country. It's a very big country. And, you know, I have very good friends from my days at Stanford, where we had what we affectionately refer to as the Brazilian Mafia. And they, they inspired me. I now spend a lot of time doing barbecue, but I do the Texas barbecue. So I want to encourage all of you. I know that there's going to be some anxious times. I know that there's going to be some concerns. Not my son-in-law who you heard, but my son, I have one son who's a geologist, and he's sort of in between jobs right now, having worked for a couple of large independents. There are going to be a lot of challenges that we face. And not everyone is going to survive. But SPE is there to help carry the wounded and help people develop new skills, help people interface and interact with each other. So I want to encourage you that I want to say one more thing. You know, in the past few years, you've heard me and Janine, certainly Darcy, and certainly Sammy talk quite a bit about sustainability and all these other things. Shauna has been really swamped with a very difficult world. And she's had a more difficult task in some ways than almost any SPE president, being SPE president today. I expect that Tom Blasingame will inherit quite a bit of the problems that she does. But following those two, our next SPE president is a guy who really understands the energy transition, who really understands exactly what is going to be required. And I expect you will see our society provide a leading role in that transition. So I wish you the best, and I can't wait to get back to Brazil.
Okay, that's it. Any thoughts, Rodrigo, Max, Carlos?
Yeah. Hey, Vitor. Just a few remarks myself as well, because we're almost running out of time. Well, extremely very insightful presentation that you guys did us today. And on behalf of the SPE Brazil section, I'd like to thank your availability to be here discussing such a very interesting topic that everyone wants to listen what you guys have to say about this topic. And certainly, we are aware that the energy transition is here, and with that, we see that everything is reshaping now, and we need to adapt. And one thing that's in my head now is the sentence that Nathan has had in his presentation: adapt or be left behind. That is very applicable to our current scenario, and certainly not only applicable to all petroleum engineers, but to any any engineers of any sectors. And so that's it. Thank you guys for your presentations today. And on other notes about the SPE Web Talks, I'd just like to say that we're back again, bringing about this new sessions for you. And certainly this month in October, we're going to have other topics being presented to you as well. We're going to talk about digital twins, well integrity. We're going to talk about Buzios. We're going to talk about other topics that are very interesting with a great panelist for you. And we are looking forward to have you there as well. And thank you. Rodrigo, you want to close out this? And
I'll just wrap it up and thank again enormously Nathan, Cesar, Victor, Max, Carlos, Pedroso, and everyone from the board, and remind everyone to join SPE or renew their membership if they haven't done it yet. As Nathan and Cesar know very well, there's a lot of options. There's a waivers for those looking for a job. Recent graduates don't pay the first year. The second year is now only $10. Third year and permanently now for Brazil, it's $20, the digital edition. So it's really a small price to pay for all that you get from SPE. It's really a huge advantage. And of course, remember, you can go to One Petro and download Nathan's paper, as well as many other ones. And so remember as well to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And Pedroso, I don't know if you want to make a final comment.
I'm sorry, what?
Oh, thank you, Rueda. I just want to say thank you very much, Nathan. Thank you, Cesar. And I really believe in the future of our industry. Some years ago, 5 years ago, I heard that the petroleum era would finish in 2040. And today, some days ago, I heard that in 2050, we will have the carbon neutrality. So we still, we are going to produce oil for the next 30 years, at least. I really believe that. So I would say to my son and daughter, yes, enter to the petroleum industry. But I believe, or I hope, that we start changing to another energy source. Brazil, in fact, has a very proficuous position in this matrix of energy. So, and I believe that we will improve it. But once again, I would like to thank you for the audience. Thank you very much. Thank you, Nathan, Cesar, and especially thank you for the young professionals, Rodrigo, the oldest young professionals in the world, Max,
White hair,
and Victor for the moderation of this webinar. Thank you very much. See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.